Okay, it's time to fix our damage types. Damage so that we can separate between things the player should worry about and things enemies should worry about. So we're going to do this by going to our blueprint folder. And you could make a new folder for it if you want, or just put it in the enemies folder. And what you want to do is right-click and choose to make a blueprint class. And what you want to create is a damage type. Right here, damage type. And you'll note that I've already made two. I've made enemy damage and player damage. I'm going to go ahead and make another one just to show you. We're going to call this one, I don't know, event damage. Maybe we'll have some cool event that does damage to both of us. But all you have to do is make it and give it a name. There are some things inside here. If we open this blueprint, it doesn't have an event graph. It doesn't have a viewport. It just has, you can add variables, and it has these settings here caused by world and damage fall off and how much impulse to cause, which these only matter for certain types of uses. But the important part is that you create one called player damage and one called enemy damage, because we're going to assign them each to a type and then check which type it's being done. So once you've done that, the first thing we want to do is start editing some of our base blueprints. So if we go and look at our twin stick projectile, in here, in our twin stick projectile, the one that the player shoots, we have our apply damage. At the bottom here, we have its damage type, and we can choose that it is player damage. And go ahead and compile and save. And then I'm going to open the projectile enemy and do the same thing here. Change it to enemy damage. Now, if you have other types of projectiles, hopefully they are built on top of your twin stick and your enemy projectile. So therefore, you'll only have to change this twice and not 20 times because they'll be built on top of each other. Now, the next thing we want to do then is to go into our base enemy, because we want to make it so that enemies are only hurt by our damage. So we want the very base enemy, the first one we made, enemy base BP, because this is where our when enemy takes damage code is, and this is what we're going to edit. So I'm just going to pull this guy out to give me a little bit more room. I'm going to pull these guys over a bit. Because in here, when we take damage, we have this damage type pullout. Now, this only gives us access by default to those variables that were in there. But we can also ask it what class it is. So we're going to type get class, which gives us this purple result, at least I think it's purple, that tells us what class the damage type is saved as. So now we can just type an equal sign and say, is the class of this damage type player damage? AKA, is the damage that's hitting me player damage? Now we have a red Boolean result, which means I can make a branch. This branch comes up into here. We're going to add it into here. And so now only if the damage that is hitting my enemy is from the player will it actually take health away. So I'm going to go ahead and compile. And now if I hit play, I still have this enemy that shoots at me, but if I hide up here in front, notice the bullets are still hitting this enemy, but they're not dealing damage to it. Which I guess does mean that we'd have to go back and change it so that those bullets don't collide with enemies, which is something we can change in another video. But at least they don't damage it now. Now we have to do the reverse, make it so that only enemy damage hurts the player. So I'm going to go to my blueprint, twin stick pawn, and do the same trick. Here's our take damage section. I'm going to make it a little bigger. Pull these guys out. And then we need to get the class of the damage. Check the equal and see if it is enemy damage. And then if it is, branch so that we get damaged. So if for some reason you hit your own projectiles, they're not going to harm you. All right. At this point now, we have two different types of damage, player damage and enemy damage, and all the enemies are only hurt by our projectiles, and we are only hurt by their projectiles.